One of the major issues you're going to have, and we just discussed this with General David Petraeus, who knows better than most what happened in both Iraq and Afghanistan in response to 9/11, is that you've got to win hearts and minds of the Palestinian people, or ultimately you'll just create more problems going forward than you even have now. How do you win hearts and minds if thousands of these civilians are dying on a daily basis? That surely will have the opposite effect. And like I say, these numbers are likely to dramatically increase. And world opinion, you know already, is turning against Israel, which seems extraordinary so soon after the scale of those terror attacks, but you know that it is. And there has been some very disturbing anti-Semitism that we've seen around the world. Does it not concern you that the strategy that Israel is currently adopting, coupled with a potential ground invasion imminently, may actually have the opposite effect to what you hope for? That you get rid of Hamas, perhaps, but in the process you create something far worse.
So first of all, people are describing Hamas, and not Israelis. International leaders have described Hamas as worse than ISIS. And when the German chancellor was here last week, he said they're like the Nazis. And so you ask what is worse than Hamas. I'm not sure there is a lot worse than Hamas, though maybe we'll be surprised. Yes, but I'm not sure that's pretty low Hamas, and I'm not sure you can get a lot worse. But can I raise one issue that needs to be said? All the numbers coming out of Gaza about civilian casualties, they're all provided by the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health. Now, as you know, better than many, that Hamas doesn't have a democratic rule. There's no civil society, independent civil society in Gaza. It's an authoritarian regime. And if you would believe the numbers coming out of Hamas, I mean, we're only killing innocent civilians. Well, obviously that's not true. They don't even record a single Hamas fighter who has been killed. And now that's clearly impossible. I don't deny there have been innocents caught up in the conflict. But the numbers that are coming out, that are announced every day by the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health, that's clearly propaganda. I mean, once again, have you heard a single announcement about combat fatalities on their side, or what I'd call terrorists that we've killed? Not one.
Well, I think, well, in a way, you've highlighted one of the big problems you're going to face going forward with a ground invasion. How do you tell somebody who's a combatant from a civilian? It's going to be incredibly difficult. You know, General Petraeus again was talking about that. Let me ask you: you're an advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. Many Israelis, I mean, the polling currently suggests that the majority of Israelis are absolutely furious at what they see as him dropping the ball in terms of security and intelligence, enabling Hamas to commit this outrage. Many think he should have resigned, but he hasn't even apologized publicly for those failings on October the 7th. Why not?
Well, first of all, Israelis are entitled to be angry. I mean, the Hamas, a brutal enemy, caught us unexpected, surprised. And there's a whole series of failures. I mean, you talk about at the top with the Prime Minister, but there's a whole series of failures that need to be investigated. Why was it that our intelligence didn't pick up on this brutal attack before it happened? I mean, we pride ourselves in Israel on having excellent intelligence services. You know, we're very proud of our Mossad and the Shin Bet and so forth. And yet they took us by surprise. And that's, you know, Israelis are asking what happened. And then there's, how did they cross the fence at so many points and succeed in just coming and raiding our communities? I mean, we spent a lot of money and technology. We were told many times that the fence is impassable, and yet they just stormed it and came across our side of the
one of the reasons, Mr. Regev, that people say the ball may have been dropped here in such a spectacular and deadly manner is because Prime Minister Netanyahu, for most of the year, has been fighting mass social protests and unrest over his attempt, as his critics put it, to usurp the authority of the Supreme Court, and that has distracted defence and intelligence operatives away from what they should have been doing, which is protecting the Israeli people from exactly the kind of attack that happened on October the 7th. And that for that reason, because it's all on Netanyahu's watch, and he's the one who's been waging this attack on the Supreme Court's authority and creating the social unrest, that because of that, he should take personal accountability and step aside.
So I think in many ways, I mean, we Israelis, as you know, have been having a very polarized political debate. We're very passionate about our politics in Israel, and there are people who hate the prime minister, and there are people who love the prime minister. And our society has had this very, demonstrations against the government and demonstrations for the government and so forth. But maybe the brutal Hamas massacre on October 7th, that was to a certain extent a slap across the face. Because let's be frank, I know that part of the southern Israel where they struck and they killed our people. But, I mean, frankly, they massacred our people, yes? They didn't ask us how we vote. They went into kibbutzim, which are on the left, yes? And they went into Sderot, which is politically, it's a Likud bastion. They don't care if you vote left or right, if you're secular or religious, if you're for or against the government's proposed judicial reforms. They killed us. They killed us randomly. They killed us brutally. They beheaded us. They raped. They burned people alive. You reported all this last night. I don't have to repeat the atrocities that were committed. And for Israelis who are passionate about their politics, and we like a good argument, but this is a wake-up call. And that is why you saw a major opposition party that has had nothing nice to say about the prime minister join the government for the duration of the conflict. This is a time for unity. This is a time to win. I mean, we didn't want this war. They declared it on us when their brutal attack. But now we have to win this war. And you've seen at the highest political level a major opposition party joining the government for the duration. And there will be a time when this is over. There'll be a time for politics. There'll be a time for lessons learned. After previous conflicts, we've had commissions of inquiries. We've had all sorts of investigations. Parliamentary investigations, judicial investigations. I don't know what will happen this time, but it's, for me as an Israeli, it's very important that if there are lessons learned, that we learn those lessons. Yes, what happened on October 7th when they crossed the border the way they did, taking us by surprise, slaughtering our people, that's clearly something that needs to be examined very thoroughly.